One of the most interesting aspects of the practice of magic is called invocation. It's hard for people to understand it because it seems foreign to our normal social experience. I mean, what invocation really is elevating one's consciousness to the divine, to becoming one with an archetype. How can you do that? That's what magic is about, and that's what we learn and teach in magic. One of the archetypes that all of us are involved with is the great god Pan. Well, Pan is a very complex entity, very complex archetype. On one level, he's considered, let's say, the head of the nature god, the satyrs and fauns and the spirit of raw nature. In a slightly more elevated sense, Pan is the god of nature, and he's the sap in the trees, the life force itself rising, ever expanding, going even higher. Pan is the all. If he's nature and if he's the life force, then he's God. He's the ever-present totality of existence. And by Crowley's definition of every idea is balanced by its opposite, he would also be the totality of non-existence. Pan is everything. Pan is the all. Pan is also the root of the word panic, because that fear of dissolution, the fear of the mania and the enthusiasm and at the same time the loss of self that is so characteristic of him, that's something that's very frightening to the ego, which seeks to hold itself in some kind of coherence, and Pan is this explosion in ecstasy. What makes invocation so unusual is that you're creating an environment in which you're seeking after a certain archetype. So let's say, you're invoking Tahuti. You'll have 8 orange candles so that you see orange burning. You'll burn a myrrh incense so that you'll have that smell. You'll wear certain clothes and hold certain weapons that are identified with that archetype, with that deity. You'll make prayers to him. You'll celebrate who he was, his myth, his life story. You'll identify his attributes with your own body. You'll say that his skin is a flaming orange, and you'll feel your skin be a flaming orange. You're trying to identify with a higher force and bring that force down into yourself. I would be inclined to say raise myself to that force. All of those trappings, the self-hypnosis that, we mentioned with the skin appearing orange, or the recitation of various attributes of the deity, or the making of intense prayers toward that deity coming in, none of that stuff really works unless you are able to enter a state of ecstasy, which is a state of madness, which is a state of complete dissolution of the ego within the being of the archetype that you've invoked. I mean, that's what magic is. Ecstasy is madness, controlled madness. They say that the magician swims in the same waters in which the psychotic realm. We purposely fling our consciousness into areas of the universe that are dangerous and that can result in loss of the self if not handled properly. The skilled magician does this repeatedly and trains his or her physical and psychic body to keep the circle intact, the psyche intact. With that kind of training, you can do it safely. The loss of self through ritual invocation is such an intensity that the ego simply cannot survive in the environment that's been created. I also believe that there is a state of grace attached to that. In other words, the archetype has to invite you into that unity and identification.